What is Dolmenwood? Dolmenwood, subtitle Adventure and Peril in Fairy Tale Woods, is a tabletop role-playing game from Necrotic Gnome, an indie RPG studio also known for old-school essentials. In Dolmenwood, you play as adventurers in the style of Hasbro of the Coast's popular Dungeons & Dragons, a dice-whipping, story-slinging Satan worship simulator excavated from the collective unconscious by psychoarchaeologists Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in the year of our Lord 1973. Presumably, you know what a tabletop role-playing game is, so what sets Dolmenwood apart? The goal of this video, as well as the others in this series, is to beam that answer directly into your brain so you can write it off, file it away, or swan dive brain first into a pool of obsession like I have. Let's start with maybe the least exciting part of Dolmenwood, the rules. Dolmenwood operates on a bare-bones, uber-classic version of the Dungeons & Dragons template, very similar to the aforementioned old-school essentials, and is considered part of the OSR or old-school Renaissance movement in role-playing games, which, at the risk of paraphrasing one of those terms people like to argue about, means it prioritizes simple rules, tension through danger, lower powered characters, exploration, and something I like to call texture over balance, which I'll get to in a minute. You got familiar friends like armor class, the number needed to whack something, hit points, the number of damages it takes to achieve deadness, as well as 6 core stattributes, which probably look eerily familiar to most TTRPG players, except they're conveniently rearranged with Dexterity 4th and Constitution 5th, the arbitrary order they were in original D&D, so we're gonna go back to that because reasons. Dolmenwood has levels, experience points, longswords, daily spell allotments, saving throws with extra goofy names, races called kindred, classes called classes, and is going to look pretty familiar to most players and DMs without too much of a stretch. When you want to do something with a risky or uncertain outcome, you roll a die and compare the number to a target and see if you did the thing or failed to did the thing. Situational modifiers are present but minimal, and generally your character sheet says exactly how likely you are to succeed without much on-the-spot mathery. Texture. Most modern role-playing games try to create a game experience that's relatively balanced, controlled, fair. They want to mitigate the role of luck, provide lots of fail-safes against unplanned character deaths, balance encounters against the power level of the party, and ensure specific characters or classes don't feel privileged over one another so that everyone is on a level playing field and gets to contribute roughly equally most of the time. OSR RPGs like Dolmenwood actively eschew this philosophy. I think this can be a positive thing because trying too hard to avoid potential bad experiences in games can be a constraint that leads to making your game design feel less organic, exciting, and interesting, and more
chicken in a pan with some salad and a glass of milk.
I'm not going to go on a bashy rant about why one way sucks. These are different flavors of game with different pros and cons, but I do really like this design direction and I'll share some of the reasons why throughout the video. Dolmenwood uses 3d6 down-the-line stattribute generation. You roll 3 die 6s for each of your ability scores and then they be. You don't rearrange them, you don't modify them, you don't balance them, you play the game. Is this for everyone? No. Is that okay?
Maybe.
This system might be traumatic to players accustomed to games that treat them nicely, like a parent who packs your lunch every day and shows up to your big karate game on time, but what we lose from the security of stable and reliable modern game design we make up for in texture, the kind of narrative chaos that pairs this guy with this guy, where underdogs become fan favorites, where titans fall at the final desperate hour, and where things just feel a little more organic. Players get shoved out of their comfort zone, forced to play characters with flaws and figure out how to leverage their talents as best they can to survive in a world full of chaos and mystery. And though the numbers on the sheet may be less balanced, the game is designed with the intention that those numbers matter less, and that the decisions you make in the moment, what you say, how you approach problems, and how you navigate the game space in real time matter more. Rulings over rules is a common term for this in the OSR community, and I think it's pretty apt. Deadness. A character reduced to 0 hit points dies immediately. No death saving throws, negative hit points, rerolls, fate points, hero points, respawns, or get out of jail free cards. The game even suggests maybe having a pool of characters to choose from in case you catch a case of the deadness in the middle of the story and want to have a backup on hand. Experience. XP to level up is a tale as old as RPGs, but here we get class-specific XP tables. Magicians level slower, thieves level faster, more glorious texture. The assumption that the whole party should be the same level at all times goes right out the window, and instead we get rough guidelines like, if you're more than like 4 levels apart, things might be a little tricky, so mix up the party a bit. Or don't. I'm an RPG rulebook, not a cop. Characters. Players can take on the role of the bizarre, more morally questionable, mostly hairless kinfolk known as humans, as well as the more mundane options such as elves from the Fey realm, goat-headed Breggles, fertile fungal mosslings, bat-faced demi-fey goblinoid woodgrews, and grimolkins, which are Cheshire cats. Classes include the familiar bard, cleric, fighter, hunter, magician, thief, as well as feudal knights sworn to a particular noble house, friars who are kind of your outdoorsy traveling clerics, and enchanters who specialize in fairy spells called glamours. Starting gear is random, hit points are random. If you want, your appearance can be random, and your name can be random. This is a game about slinging dice from the time your butt hits the seat, even before your character exists. Not for build planning, number crunching, forum lurking, and theory crafting, but for playing the game and seeing what happens at your unique table. While on the surface this might sound unwelcoming, it's actually a great way to introduce new players to the hobby, because it means you don't need to do a bunch of prep reading, or build planning, or make a bunch of uninformed choices you'll end up regretting later when you understand the rules better. Instead, you sit down, throw some dice, and voila! In mere minutes, you are Slumbrid Moldfoot, a mossling cheese maker with a jar of mysterious green slime in your pocket that no one dares to ask you about. Your voice is grumbly, your kilt is ivy, and your class is hunter. You are unique, you are flawed. Go have an adventure, Mr. Moldfoot. You can see the DNA of D&D throughout, but everything has its own original flavor, and doesn't just feel like a rehash of the Tolkien-esque high fantasy we've seen a lot already. Rather, Dolmenwood leans heavy into the weird, mysterious, dark, illogical, dangerous, and slightly mad world of the Fae, where everything, time, weather, seasons, politics, and the denizens of the forest all feel just a little bit unhinged. Now let's talk about Dolmenwood. Not the game, but the wood, with dolmens in it. I know you know what dolmens are because there's a picture of one on the screen right now, so let's get into the really juicy stuff. Dolmenwood is a beautifully illustrated, intricately mapped Fae Forest campaign setting that started off in 2015 as a series of installments in a zine called Wormskin and has since blossomed into its own standalone role-playing game, with the player's guide releasing in 2024. Dolmenwood is presented as a hex crawl map with 6-mile hexes. It is mapped and detailed exhaustively, and when I say exhaustively, I mean a GM-facing map, an in-world vaguely inaccurate and incomplete player-facing map, a blank player map for note-taking and exploration, color-keyed settlement maps, plus an entire separate maps book breaking down the whole forest by geography, political influence, people, elevations, shrines, forageables, supernatural stuff, old gods, fairy stuff, services, healing sources, treasures, waterways, roads, travel and encounters, and the names of every individual hex. It is difficult to overstate just how dripping with flavor these books are, from the gorgeous storybook illustrations to the vivid weirdness of all of the towns and locations, to the 2-page spreads dedicated to pipe leaf flavors and common herbs and fungi, even a table of moon signs and their meanings. There are unseasons that sometimes but not always occur at specific days on the calendar, resulting in rising of many snakes or strange fogs or other sorts of events. Names for things are quirky and memorable without being esoteric or unpronounceable. We have the debauched and complacent Baron Hogwarsh of the High Wold, the chaotic and insidious godling known as the Nag Lord, and the seat of authority of the Pluritine Church, Castle Brackenwold. These are names that stick because they're a little odd and they evoke something. They suggest something. The last thing I'd like to discuss is the books themselves, especially from the game master's perspective. The Dolmenwood books are immaculately organized. A huge amount of thought has gone into condensing meaningful information, reducing page flipping at the table, and making the books usable. Typography, headers, and page breaks are strategically applied to organize information and make sure that related info is contained on a single page or 2-page spread. Rarely are descriptions presented as giant blocks of unbroken text that are slow to read at the table. Relevant details are reproduced where necessary, and inline page references are common. These books want you to sit down and run the game without fear, and everything about their design serves that goal. The campaign materials are wonderfully elaborate. Dolmenwood includes a massive 464-page campaign book that details 200 hexes, with a minimum of 1 full page of information about every individual hex. But like every aspect of Dolmenwood, it does not demand a cover-to-cover reading from you. Major players, history, factions, and settlements are detailed in their own sections, and rough outlines of different types of campaign approaches are provided to let you start where you want and then wander where you want without having to memorize everything everywhere all at once. I've crammed about enough syllables into this one, so please, if Dolmenwood sounds intriguing to you, go check it out. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it is epic, high art in role-playing form, the likes of which we only see maybe once every few years out of the whole industry. Necrotic Gnome, you have lovingly crafted a game that I, as a 25-year veteran dungeon master, want to run, and I thank you for it. In fact, right now, I'm gearing up to run a live-streamed game for an all-Fae party on YouTube and Twitch, and an in-person game set on the same timeline with some crossover between the two groups. To catch us live or see recordings of our sessions, search for the Wanderers Guild Dolmenwood. We'd love for you to pay us a visit and mention the video. Until next time, game big, wander far.